Joe. Right. Our first speaker will be Professor Dr. Reuben Garcia from Peru, and he'll be sharing with us on relationship in education. So, Professor Dr. Reuben Garcia is a teacher of English with 32 years of experience in ESL and ELT. He holds a degree in education and Masters of Applied Linguistics and TESOL by Macquarie University, Australia. He also works as a coach in leadership, personal development, and professional growth. Outstanding Toastmaster of the year 2012 to 2013, and past president and current member at Lima Toastmasters Club and teacher trainer accredited by Cambridge English Language Assessment, part of the University of Cambridge in United Kingdom. He's also the member of the board of directors at Peru, current member at Sherwood Town Crier, and many more. He's a member of the board of directors at ALVARO, which is a non-profit association which provides voluntary assistance to people with emotional needs. Professor Dr. Reuben Garcia is the director of the Language Center at Unicida Valladolid Las Americas, CEO at Speak Up Assertive Leadership Company, Peru branch, president at the International Chambers of Language Teacher, ICLT, Peru branch, and also president at Organización Internacional de Conferencias, OIC, the International Organization of Public Speakers, and above all, is the master coach at Organización Mundial de Coach, OMC, and also we are privileged that he is also YY.C.I International President of Peru. Join me now this morning to welcome Professor Dr. Reuben Garcia from Peru. You are welcome, sir.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and around the world. I really appreciate your kind invitation to be here talking about a very, very important topic, since we are talking about transformation minds. And we have the basis in education. What do we know about education? Everybody has an idea of what education is, because every one of us have been educated. And if we want to mention something about education, we can start by saying that the transformation of education is right for given the word social and economic development and needs for new skills. Education systems around the world are looking for ways to leverage as well as contribute to the growing climate of innovation and creativity, all while keeping up with changes in society. This is important. This is the key. Changes in society. Advancing education reform, particularly in countries with a growing youth population, will encourage responsible citizenship, develop their human capacity and support their transition into a knowledge-based economy. In recent years, education has been transformed from a teacher-centered approach to a learner-centered one. Innovative application in education, such as digital games, virtual reality, and robotics, have gained importance to support learners and teachers with this transformation and to develop 21st century skills of learners such as problem solving, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. And in this transformation of education, we can focus on relationship. Relationship in education. How important is to get along with each other in this great positive relationships in schools. Don't you think that this is important? Let's start by schools. But with the same idea, we can go on in higher education. In other words, in all places where education is given and we have group of students together. So positive relationships are central to the well-being of both students and teachers and underpin and effective learning environment. There is now a wealth of research on the importance of connectedness in schools and on the specific qualities of in-school relationships that promote effective education. We can explore and know what schools might do to increase the level of social capital and positive relationships within the school community. Don't you think that schools play a significant part not only in formal and informal education of young people, but also in their well-being, and hence the well-being of families and communities of the future? Let me recall the study that the World Health Organization in 1995 did with the Global School Health Initiative. They brought the concept of education for well-being into the foreground. Related initiatives have since been adopted or developed by governments of education authorities in many parts of the world. In 2003, the Wingspread Declaration, a national strategy for improving school connectedness, was issued in the United States. This is based on a detailed review of the relevant research as well as in-depth discussions among leaders in health and education. It summarizes the evidence for positive relationships across education. So, if we talk about well-being, it comprises not only physical but also psychological health. This is very important. We are talking about health integrity, physical and psychological. So this is demonstrated by both optimal functioning and predominantly positive feelings. It is where people are flourishing rather than languishing in their everyday lives. Although acknowledging a responsibility to respond to individual needs and specific issues, this broader concept of health has increasingly incorporated a whole school approach in which all aspects of the school system are targeted to establish a health promoting environment for all. We can also mention that the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, comprising 30 nations, issued its first report in 2009 on indicators of child well-being. The 6 dimensions identified are material well-being, housing and environment, health and safety, risk behaviors, and quality of school life. How quality is defined and developed goes beyond material resources and the curriculum to the heart of the teaching endeavor. The key word, emotions. So emotions and relationships exist all day, every day in the classroom, staff room, and throughout the school. Sometimes these feelings and relationships, especially for more vulnerable students, can be overwhelmingly negative. The quality of the learning environment, therefore, depends not only on curriculum content, but also how accessible this is to students. The active promotion of positive feelings, enjoyment, achievement, optimism, safety of the sense of belonging, alongside positive and healthy relationships, facilitate an environment in which everyone is able to flourish and learn. This was proved by Fredrickson in 2009 and Rothie in 2011. So this, what we know now, is through a big research in which we know that the essence of schools and the quality of learning environment has been a focus of research for several decades, particularly in relation to behavioral issues. The Elton Report on Discipline in Schools in the United Kingdom in 1989 advocated a coherent whole school approach to behavior based on good relationships between all members of the school community. The Steele Report on Learning Behavior in 2005, nearly 30 years later, says that despite the differences in educational practices, this still holds true. The difference now is how much more we know about what constitutes good relationships in the schools and the multiple and interrelated outcomes, not only for behavior, but also for academic achievement. Most importantly, researchers and practitioners have discovered and developed ways in which these relationships might be brought about. And we can continue saying that physical capital comprises hardware resources such as buildings and equipment. Human capital comprises knowledge and skills, and social capital refers to the quality of relationships within an organization or community. This is important. The whole community, because social capital can be defined as the levels of trust, mutual responsibility, and reciprocity that people experience in their interactions with each other and their sense of belonging to a particular community with a shared identity and shared values. What do you think of this so far? Isn't it interesting? And if we continue with this topic, we can now centered in the classroom. The ways of viewing order in the classroom are changing. To investigate the effects of this, we have returned to our earlier studies, but now with a view of analyzing how teachers maintain discipline in classrooms today. The observations, and many observations, were carried out with the purpose of capturing the relationships between teaching and learning, and the relationships between teacher and students. To create an understanding, we have used a phenomenological hermeneutic theory. And we have that in this approach, there is an ambition to intertwine life in the world. And a central idea is that everyone is always directed towards something. Which this implies that this is an important component when teaching. A study in this tradition implies that the phenomenon is presented in a broad and rich way. We can also say that observations in various classrooms have the result that studies, for example, with teachers, have reported that the relationship is or does not contradict the material that is selected in the class. Because when teachers think about their classes, since the very beginning in lesson plans, they have to consider this good relationship among all their students. How difficult is for a teacher or a professor to deal with good classroom management? If you are a teacher, you are a professor, you are in charge of a classroom, you can have the answer. We always say that it is not easy, and it's sometimes challenging to have the positiveness from the beginning to the end. Every minute, every second counts. We cannot have negative aptitudes because negative aptitudes bring negative behavior. And how can we deal with negativity? It is important to highlight that the teacher's authority is not self-evident just because he or she is a member of a profession with a fairly high status. However, we can say that teachers do not plan their lessons primarily with the thought of maintaining discipline. Rather than they plan to give their students opportunities to learn the intended content of the lesson. In the classroom studies presented, we have nevertheless identified three different strategies for teaching that affect the teacher's ability to maintain discipline: individualization, grab instruction, and an oscillation between individuals and group instruction. So if we talk about individualizing the teaching, let me share with you a case. Let's have a case study together in this masterclass. Let me tell you about Adam, who is a science teacher at an upper secondary school in an area with a large number of immigrants. Adam regards every student as unique and should be met with unique questions from the teacher, which in his way of encourage students to search for knowledge independently. Adam has become to a conclusion or has come to a conclusion that education in an environment such as his must be designed according to these ideas. And his teaching follows the same structure during every lesson and in all classes. For him, teaching boils down to the idea that every student should have the opportunity to ask the teacher questions that result from their own curiosity within the domain of science. This implies that the students cannot always study the same content at the same time. Adam tells the students to formulate a question of their own and then asks them to describe in writing how they are to get the answers to their own questions. Adam's idea about individualization implies that every student should get the work with their personal issues in the school laboratory where they are expected to carry out various experiments. In the classroom, Adam moves around assisting students one at a time, and the conversations he has with his students can be described as being of a Socratic nature or using open questions, which he himself hardly ever answers. His idea is that the students should also take notes about what they are studying. I do not know what to write, one girl says. Can you write what you learned about plants and water? Adams asks. Why do we have to write so much? Another student asks. In order to know what you think about the topic, a third pupil or a third student answers. So you can see that we have developed, says a boy, with a glance at Adams. Do I have to know that? Adam responds. In this situation, it appears that while one student does not know what to write, another wonders why they have to write so much. They try to get Adam, who's the teacher, to tell them what the point of writing is. But they don't really get a clear answer. Adam responds, as often as the case in the classroom context, with a new question. From the observations in the classroom, it is clear that some students are passive. Honestly, I have not learned anything at all, says a girl who seems restless. She wants Adam to tell her how things are linked, but it is clear that Adam wants her to figure it out on her own. The implications of this way of teaching are that many students have a unique opportunity to have Adam's support, but that many students are also left to their own devices, as far from everyone can find their own interesting question or develop the question independently in the classroom environment. So instead, many students deal with other things that do not have any bearing on their aim of the lessons. Some students are chatting with each other while Adam, the teacher, has long conversations with one or sometimes two students at a time. Then we can think that from a discipline perspective, although some students have a lot of support, many students seem to be left without guidance and with unanswered questions that seem to make them anxious and frustrated. Therefore, the pupils who are left behind may not have the opportunity to expand their horizons in such a way that they have opportunities to learn the intended content of the lesson. Instead of working with their assignments, they do other things. Some of them seem to think it is nice to decide for themselves what to do. And they chat about various things that interested them. Other students take the advantage of the opportunity to get private tuition from their teacher, and they seek Adam's attention and develop well in the subject. Adam continues with his way of teaching, even though he does not reach all his students. To sum up, individualizing teaching causes some problems. The largest problem from an order and discipline points of view is that too many students are left alone in the classroom. And this means that Adam loses many students' interests and attention. Most of all, he loses the pupils who do not understand what the teaching is about from the start. The working environment in the classroom, where many different activities are going on, is confused. And a good many activities have nothing to do with science. So we need to work with the whole class, because if individualization does not work, would it be better to teach the whole class at the same time? John is a history and civics teacher at an upper secondary school. He is directed towards the whole class and gives lectures. John is also deeply engaged with his subject and prepares each lesson carefully. Let me finish with this. On one occasion, John gives the class a description of the historical background to the conflict between Jews and Muslims in Israel. It's 1914. What happened then? The First World War, a student answers. Yes. So John moves while he speaks. He walks back and forward, looking at the pupils and talking with enthusiasm. And now they do a thing that is really momentous. He describes how countries were formed and their borders set after the First World War. It was decided over all of their heads. So John is completely engaged in the content of this is reflected in his body language. So he makes sure that everybody pays attention to him. And he makes sure that everybody is engaged with the lesson that he is given. And he makes sure that discipline goes on, but not as a must. Is the consequence of the great interests that students have in the whole class that he is leading. So how different these classrooms were conducted. Adams, the science teacher, and John, the history teacher. So this is a lesson for us to maintain this relationship positively in a classroom. Every classroom is a whole world. Every class is different from one another. We teachers are not only there to guide them, we have to demonstrate that we are leaders and we are talking to leaders, transforming education, and having everyone in the classroom thinking about how they can be a change maker. Better to say, a global change maker, and tell them, yes, you can. Thank you very much. Greetings
Thank
from
you.
Lima, Peru.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Reuben Garcia from Peru. Thank you so much for your first delivery this morning on the 1st of May, 2024, during our Masters for Transforming Relationship Part 2. Thank you for your great teaching, and we appreciate you, sir. In a few minutes, I will be quickly asking our audience if they have any questions before you leave us. We appreciate your time. We appreciate what you've delivered to us today, especially in the areas of relationship in education. Clear, bold, clearly, simple, but powerful. And I believe that when we understand all this, we will be able to transform our relationship within the education sector and even within the classroom. So thank you so much. So while I'm waiting for a few minutes for questions to be dropped on chat box on Zoom or Facebook or even live, let me quickly appreciate all our great leaders that have joined us this morning. Professor Dr. Ambassador Raymond Onika, thank you. Onike, thank you for joining us. Professor Nada Rakosvik from Croatia, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Ambassador Dr. Stephen Temitope Davison from Zambia, thank you for joining us. Dr. Stephen from Pakistan, thank you for joining us. Honorable Dr. Onyekachi Ofuru from Nigeria, thank you for joining us. And Ambassador Farah Sama, thank you so much for joining us. And for those people on our Facebook, Ambassador Christian Uzere, thank you for joining us. Renji Thomas, thank you so much for joining us. Yes, Professor Nada was there, but she is now live here in the Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us. So I believe you are still thinking about your questions, but let me just share quickly this information.
Relationships, they're the foundation of our lives. But let's face it, they can be tough.
Sorry about that.
Relationships, they're the foundation of our lives. But let's face it, they can be tough. Conflict arises, emotions boil over, and maintaining a healthy connection becomes a challenge. But what if we told you there's a book that can change it all? Introducing Relationship Matters: How to Solve Conflict, Maintain and Keep Relationships, and Manage Emotions. This comprehensive guidebook, written by relationship experts, offers practical solutions to transform your relationships. Discover effective conflict resolution strategies that promote peaceful communication and understanding. Learn essential relationship maintenance techniques to nurture and cultivate strong connections with your loved ones. Dive into valuable emotion management strategies and regain control over your reactions. Relationship Matters has already helped countless individuals rejuvenate their relationships and find emotional well-being. Don't miss out on this opportunity. Get your copy of Relationship Matters today, available exclusively on Amazon.com. Change your relationships, change your life. Order Relationship Matters now.
Thank you for joining us today. I just want to appreciate your time of joining us today. So we just want to welcome our next speaker. It's supposed to be Dr. Samina. I believe that we give her time to settle down. She's joining us very soon. But let me just introduce our next speaker. Any question, please, before we release Professor Reuben Garcia. But to me, personally, I have enjoyed, listened and learned from your presentation this morning. To me, I think it is clearer, simple for everyone to understand. So I believe that is why we haven't received any questions yet. But I can assure you, sir, Professor Reuben, whenever the questions rolling in, I will definitely send them to you so that we can get a proper answer for all our questions. So on behalf of Y.Y.C.I International, which you are also part of us as the president of YYCI Peru, we want to say thank you, sir, for joining us and being the first person, first leader, first speaker of our May 2024 Mindset for Transforming Relationship Part 2 Masterclass. We really appreciate you, sir. Thank you for joining us. Okay, right. While we move on to the